Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. St. Anne's residential school survivors will not be heard at the nation's highest court. The Supreme Court of Canada has refused to hear their appeal. The survivors' battle began when the federal government refused to hand over thousands of documents during the residential schools compensations claims process. They had launched a case which revealed the horrific treatment of students at one of Canada's worst residential schools in the country. Last March, the survivors asked the Supreme Court to intervene, but Thursday morning, it dismissed the appeal without any reason given. And we'll have more on St. Anne's and their fight coming up on Nation to Nation right after the news. A Senate committee is studying the federal government's suicide prevention framework, and Senator Patrick Brazeau was the first witness to address the committee. Brazeau drew from his own experiences. He has attempted suicide twice, but has now been sober for 2.5 years. Brazeau says it's an issue that must be discussed. He told senators that the framework needs a rethink, and the focus needs to be put on better prevention programs for Indigenous men and boys.
You know, those rehab facilities, once you get in there, the owners, it's a business. You know, they tell you, well, the success rate is 2%. 2%. So why in the heck would the justice system send people to these places when really it's just it's just number in, number out. And people, people go back in, people go back out, but nothing is being done. 2%. So I say that, but I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm one of the lucky ones that made it. And I count my blessings every day.
To BC now, where the largest city in the province is about to take reconciliation to a whole new level. As APTN's Tina House tells us, a report will be given to Vancouver City Council about how to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
The Squamish Nation victory song rang out as chiefs, leaders from the community, and representatives from City Hall gathered to celebrate the report by the Squamish Nation, Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and Musqueam Indian Band that will promise a new relationship with the city of Vancouver.
150 some odd years after Confederation, we are being given consideration as human beings of this land, of this country, of this world.
For National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, this is a historic day for all Indigenous people across Canada, and she says there is now opportunity for other municipalities to embrace UNDRIP.
It's really important for all municipalities to, especially in BC that has its own UNDRIP legislation, to really embrace these kinds of plans on how they will align themselves with those principles. So for example, I was speaking to somebody earlier here who was a part of the plan making, and they're talking about going from where you are today, which is at the very beginning of the plan, to eventually talking about something like taxation sharing. So how do you begin to share that wealth that is being generated from the lands with the people who the land belongs to, the original peoples?
In November of 2019, the province of BC officially recognized Bill C-41, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And since 2014, Vancouver has been known as the City of Reconciliation. In 2021, City Council created a task force called the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, with the goal of a report outlining 79 recommendations. The 4 themes of the report include social, cultural, and economic well-being, ending Indigenous Pacific racism and discrimination, self-determination, and inherent right of self-government, rights and title of Indigenous people. Rebecca Bly is a Vancouver City Councillor.
We're extremely proud as a city to be the first as a city of reconciliation, and we'll continue to have councillors who served on the task force to help guide us as we navigate the realization of what's in this report.
For BC AFN Regional Chief Terry Teegee, this new relationship between Indigenous people and the City of Vancouver is a welcome opportunity.
The fundamental fight for those that were fought many years in courts was to uphold our traditional governance, and our sovereignty and our self-determination and how development occurs. And that can happen here. Vancouver is the biggest municipality in British Columbia. There's a lot of development in these territories. So they need to better understand what is the point of view from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I think that's a real significant step today to implement UNDRIP.
The report will be presented to Vancouver City Council next week for their approval. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
The federal government doesn't know how many of their employees speak an Indigenous language at work. Around 70% of Nunavut residents speak Inuktitut. Nunavut's bilingual MP is trying to get recognition and a bilingual bonus for people bringing Indigenous languages to the federal workplace. Ken Driscoll has more.
If you work for the federal government and speak French and English, you get a bonus of about $800 a year. If your second language is an Indigenous language, you do not. The feds have admitted they don't even know how many Indigenous speakers work for them countrywide. That's a problem for Nunavut MP Lori Idlout. 70% of her constituents speak Inuktitut.
During this time of reconciliation, I think the federal government needs to make good on its promises and recognize the great work that its federal employees do that are Indigenous, who speak Indigenous languages.
Here's a situation many bilingual Inuktitut speakers will recognize: having to interpret for a unilingual family member because there's no service in Inuktitut. It gets even tougher when the topic is technical, like healthcare or banking. Idlout has been there.
I have, for sure, frequently. I think that a lot of us in Nunavut were forced to have to interpret wherever we go. When I've been in Iqaluit, whenever I went to the bank and there was an elder with no English-speaking teller, I'd have to help the elder there. Absolutely, at the hospitals, always having to help make sure that the elders are at least getting registered so that they know where to wait.
Here at Service Canada in Iqaluit, you can get service in Inuktitut, but the person speaking it isn't getting their extra $800 a year. Over at the RCMP, they have enough Inuktitut speakers here at headquarters to handle most Inuktitut requests. The experience is different in smaller communities.
With Canada being founded on Indigenous people's lands, we need to make sure that there is better respect for people that the federal government needs to serve.
Idlout's not the only voice calling for more support for Inuktitut. Nunavut Tungavik, the group that represents Nunavut Inuit, spent part of their annual meeting this week calling for the same. They're all calling for the federal government to support Indigenous languages, just like they do for the two official ones. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
The Manitoba Métis Federation is calling for justice after someone defaced Louis Riel's gravesite just days before the anniversary of his birth. That story and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. The Manitoba Métis Federation is outraged after someone defaced Louis Riel's gravesite earlier this week. A witness first reported it on social media. A passerby appeared to have scratched the photo and name on Riel's tombstone. In a press release, the MMF called the attack and disrespect shown to Riel appalling and plans to seek justice. Riel was a founder of Manitoba and political leader of the Métis. Innu music in Quebec has transformed and evolved from one generation to the next. It was used as a means of communication on their ancestral territory in the days before the telephone was invented. Today, thanks to social media and improved technology, Innu music can reach a world stage in a whole new way. Here's a story by Shushan back home, translated and read by Lindsay Richardson.
For generations, Innu singers have used the power of voice and vibration to communicate with their ancestors. Whether for hunting or for healing, it is still considered to be a sacred instrument. Today, the instrument commonly preferred among Innu musicians is the guitar. Mckenzie, a singer-songwriter from Maniutanam, is considered to be a pioneer among contemporary Innu artists. His early songs exploring the rich culture targeted by the residential school system.
Il fallait que je chante ce que l'Autochtone le sait, qui comprennent. Moi, dans ma perception à moi, bon, il faut pas... on a beaucoup à perdre.
Emile Grégoire, a singer-songwriter from the nearby community of Washat, also started exploring music around the same time, writing hundreds of songs and financing the release of his own albums. Now 80 years old, Grégoire is still spry and passionate about music, but admits the early days weren't easy.
On enregistre-tu? Moi non, prends ton char, puis attache le trailer, je te Je vais marcher un côté du chemin, puis toi, tu vas marcher de l'autre côté, en ramassant les bouteilles. Québec, où je te dis, mais oui, de diète était au lac Saint-Jean.
But things really picked up speed in the 1980s, when the band Cashed In, led by Florent Vallant and Claude Mckenzie, brought Innu culture to the main stage of worldwide contemporary music. In 2021, Florent Vallant had his hand in the opening of the Makusham Music Studio, where several Innu artists have produced full albums of their own songs. Helping to run it today is Mathieu Mckenzie, who happens to be Florent Vallant's son. He sees immense talent growing in Innu communities. However, even in 2022,
ça prend beaucoup de fonds pour créer des bons produits. Les fonds qu'on a dans les communautés suffisent pas pour aller développer des musiques de haut niveau.
Social media, however, has changed the way people consume music, and in many ways makes it easier to share with the world. In Maniutanam, 15-year-old Jean-Luc Chapatou Vallant performs for a digital audience via his social media. It allows him to perform with well-known modern artists like Scott-Pierre Picard. But he dreams of more and aspires to a full-time career in song.
Je monte ma musique sur les réseaux sociaux, fait tout le monde est au courant, puis tout le monde est au courant que mec, les projets s'annoncent, les grands projets, puis c'est ça, j'aimerais ça plus tard qu'il y ait des covers de mes chansons.
From the forests of the Nistasinan to the Facebook and Instagram of today, contemporary Innu music continues to resonate on the world stage. And even despite the language barrier, it carries a message that extends beyond the Indigenous communities of Quebec.
Tout est bien reçu de votre part de nous soutenir dans cette démarche pour prendre cette place-là qu'on mérite maintenant.
A report by Shashan Bacon, APTN National News, Washat Mckenzie, Quebec.
Good jams there. Still to come, sports with Stranger hits the streets. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Kenneth O'Keefe sent in this photo of Big Bear Lake, British Columbia, capturing a calm fall day with the changing colors of the leaves. Big Bear Lake is located northwest of Kamloops. If you have a photo you'd like to share, you can email your photo to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at Friday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 17 for Halifax, 15 in Fredericton, 4 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 8 in Nain, 14 in Montreal, snow and 6 for Chibougamau, 16 in Sault Ste. Marie, showers and 11 in North Bay, 15 for Thunder Bay, rain and 12 in Sioux Lookout. In northern Manitoba, 9 in God's Lake, 8 for Norway House, 13 in Winnipeg, 14 for Brandon and Dauphin, 11 in Regina and Saskatoon, 10 in North Battleford, 14 with showers in Meadow Lake and La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 9 with showers for Peace River and Grand Prairie, 10 with rain in Edmonton, showers in 13 for Lethbridge, 15 with rain in Vancouver, 10 with showers in Kamloops, 8 in Prince George, showers, and 8 in Smithers. -9 with snow in Old Crow, +5 with rain in Whitehorse. 0 and snow in Yellowknife, -4 with flurries in Norman Wells. -14 in Sachs Harbor, 2 below with snow for Colville Lake, +1 in Chesterfield, 5 below in Whale Cove, -21 for Resolute, 2 below with snow in Igloolik. This week on Sports with Stranger, Daryl took things outside the studio to check out a run that benefits Indigenous women and girls. And rumor has it that he might have joined in on the run himself. Here's this week's segment of Sports with Stranger.
For me, it's about coming back to this place on these lands and then moving in ways that we used to as Indigenous people, and then having everyone come together as a community to really show that through individual sport and accomplishments, we're not alone in that. And so for me, it's a really cool physical representation of just people coming from all across Manitoba to support Indigenous women and girls.
Just coming at the beginning, the excitement that we're all doing this together and seeing people and hugging, people you run into from community. I think that's the best part. And then just the running part and the after of just completing something that it's not too big, not too small. And it doesn't matter if you're running and walking at the same time, you're accomplishing a goal all together. And that at the end, everyone's just excited that we got to participate in something fun together.
MASRC means a lot to me as an Indigenous woman and an athlete. They've provided lots of opportunities and support for me to have better experiences in the recreation world, and have also provided me with opportunities to give back so other younger girls can have more positive experiences too.
A lot of people, for myself, finding sport and being active has increased my mental well-being and just helping myself to live a more balanced life. So just, to try and come out to a fun community event and have people cheer you on, and, it's just great encouragement to start moving in a healthy way with community.
Far too often, tragically, we're brought together in ways that aren't meant to support us. Often it's for tragedy and support work. So I think it's really important that we're here today to celebrate and lift up one another, but also the up-and-coming generations of young women and girls. So it's really important to me, but I know for our community too, to take part in things where we're taking care of each other, but also celebrating our victories.
I just hope the takeaway today is that no matter where you are, who you are, where you come from, any opportunity to answer the truth and reconciliation calls to action, or to show up for Indigenous community by removing barriers, just figure out what that looks like for you, and answer that calling if it's in your heart. And I think that we could all do better in this world.
Notice Daryl doesn't show himself crossing the finish line. I'm going to have to ask him what his time was for that. It's Thursday, so that means another episode of Nation to Nation is coming right up. Here's host Fraser Needham with a look ahead.
On tonight's episode of Nation to Nation, the fallout after Supreme Court of Canada decides it will not hear an appeal to release more documents from a former residential school in Northern Ontario. The coroner's inquest into the death of a First Nations teen in Hamilton, Ontario, draws to a close. And Conservative MP Gary Vidal talks about legislation to create a new National Council on Reconciliation and where the party goes from here now that a new leader is in place. I'll have all that for you in just a matter of minutes.
And tomorrow night on APTN Investigates, reporter Brittany Guillot identifies alleged Catholic church abusers who worked at multiple residential schools and in Indigenous communities. Here's a preview.
The first thing I remember was seeing all those nuns with their black, everything was black. And the same with the priests, yeah, they're always in black.
I think at first I was really scared when I started seeing how the nuns were so abusive to the children.
We used to help in church while they're having mass, and we used to hold wine and water and for cleaning his hands. And he used to tell us to wait. That's how it started from him.
My mom and dad took us there because they had no choice.
Yeah, I think there should have been some consequences at least, yeah. The normal public lives out their old age in jail. I think they should do the same thing too.
And that full story will air right here tomorrow night, including an interview with a priest who fled to France after charges were laid in Canada. We'll also be speaking with Brittany tomorrow about her story, so stay tuned for that as well. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and stick around. Nation to Nation with Fraser Needham is just minutes away. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.